We're on Lamed Hey Yam and Aleph by the Mishnah. On the top, 4 lines on the top. Mashbi'ani aleichem loy tavoyu v'atiyiduni shamish ploni litin li masayim zuz loy nasan. Someone tries to get Adam to testify that Shimon promised he's going to give me. He said he's going to give me 200 zuz, and he didn't give it. Harei turim these Adam apater shein chayavin el al tvias mammon kapikadin. You can only be mechayiv a shvus edus on a taina of mammon. We've proven before. We're going to see later on in this mission as well that it has to be a tvias mammon, but it has to be a tvias mammon that's enforceable. Even if you say that Reuven says Shimon promised me 200 zuz, and Shimon says, and he says I'm going to bring Adam that you promised me 200 zuz and you never gave it. Shimon could say bring Adam from Penhaint Bismargen, but you can't enforce it against me. Just because I said I'm going to give it to you doesn't mean I have to give it to you. It's just a promise. So I'm an Indian giver, but you can't take away the money from me. It has to be Tvias Mammon Kipikadin that there's an actual taina behind it. Mashbi'ani aleichem zok the Mishnah kshetedu li edus. Reuven says to 2 Adam, Shimon and Levi, I want you to be on standby that as soon as you know edus on my behalf, just tavoyu v'tayiduni. You should come and say the edus on my behalf, and I'm putting a shvu on you. Harei l'pturim, they're patum neshekad mishvu edus, because he's talking about a speculative edus, but currently there's no edus. Amad b'beis hakneses, if the mashbia, the teveya says, stands up in the base medrash for Omar, mashbi'ani aleichem shem atem yoidim li edus shetavoyu v'tayiduni. He says, whoever in this whole base medrash knows edus for me should come and say edus, and I'm putting a shvu on you. Harei pturin. You see in the parentheses, Achiyah miskaven lehem. He has to point out an individual person. He has to be directed towards someone. Amol l'shnayim. He said to 2 people, Mashmi alechem ish ploini uploini. He's designating exactly what he's talking about. Shematem yoidim li edus shetavoyu v'tayiduni. He said it was mashbia them. He placed on them a shvua that if they know edus, they should come say it. And they said shvua shein ani yoidim l'cha edus. And they were masking. They said a shvua that we don't know any edus for you. Ve'im yoidim li edus ein mipi eid. But they taka do know edus, but it's only hearsay. They heard it from someone else. Or if one of these eidim were not a karv, was a karv, they weren't a kosher eid. Harei pturim. Again, these are going to be potter because they're edus that they knew, although they knew edus. ABP eid is not kosher, and certainly saying edus as a karv apostle is not a good edus. Now we already they ask the Rishonim ask that we already had in the Mishnah before that it has to be a karav apostle. We said it when we were comparing all the different types of shvuas. We said legabi shvuas bitoi or legabi shvuas apikadin, for example, a shvuas a shvua of a karav could be a shvua of a karav apostle. It doesn't make a difference. So why are we saying this? And we said about a shvuas edus that a karv apostle is no chiyuv of shvuas edus. So
where are we?
We're up to on Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, the end of the Mishnah. So they answer that over here we're talking about even if the nitva agreed, he was masking. He said, I'll even accept if there's if a aid comes who's a karv, I'm going to be makabel that as an aidus against me. Even so, even though the aid is makabel under those circumstances, it's still not going to be considered a shvuas aidus that he's mechayiv a carbon if he says that he doesn't know the aidus, because he's not a kosher aid. It's really more b'derech hahidah by the nitva rather than a aidus. Right in the Mishnah, Shalach bi'ad avdoi. We had this before. If he sent the request, the shvuas acherim, he sent his demand for the edim to come swear, to come say edus. He said, make a shvua that you don't know the edus. He said there was a shliach. Hashem lahem nitva. Or if it wasn't the teveh, it wasn't the person who's trying to bring the edim, but the other party who said to them, Masrini aleichem shematem yoedim lo edus. If you know from the opposing party, if you know edus, come and say your edus. Turim, they're Pater. It's not going to be Edus until you hear it from the person who's benefiting from the Edus. That's the only Shavuos Edus. So let me know if this makes too much noise. It's really hot in this room, so I'm going to turn on the air conditioner, if you don't mind. Let me know if it's making too much noise. So Aktamar, Taner Rabbanan. Mashbiani aleichem im leitavoy v'atu yiduni shamish pleni litin lemasayim zuz loy nasen yachal yu chayavim. If he was mashbia an aid, that another person told you, another person said he's going to give me a masayim zuz, and he didn't give it. Yachal yu chayavim, which is the first case of our Mishnah, where you tried to get Aiden to come say that someone said he was going to give. Talmud Loimer, where do you know he's not chayav? Talmud Loimer sechta l'gzeir shavan. Nema kan sechta. It says l'gabi shvuos eida sechta, v'nema on sechta. It says by shvuos b'kan sechta. Ma'alam b'tvias mama yeshlei av kam b'tvias mammon v'yeshlei. It has to be first of all the tvias mammon, and just like b'kadin, it also has to be that there's a tvias mammon that is cognizable in court. It has to be a tvias mammon that has going to be enforceable. A tvia that someone said he's going to give you money is not enforceable, and therefore he doesn't have any money, even though it's a tvia, even though you're saying edus about a taina of mammon, but it can't, even if the edus is true, you can't enforce it. So mashmini aleichem kishetedu li edus. He asked the edim, he put a shvu on the edim that if you ever know edus on me, you're going to come say it. And they, I guess, said, we're making a shvu that when we hear edus in the future, we're going to come say it. Where do you know that's not a valid shvuas aid? This time, Pasuk says, he hears the shvua being placed on him, who aid, and he's an aid, meaning he was already an aid prior to that, not that he became an aid later. The Pasuk says, who aid, that's mashma that the aidus came before he made the shvua. In this case, the Tavei is asking the aid to make a shvu about the future. If he made a general call for aidim to be mashbia or any aid in the crowd, Shmuel says even if there are aidim amongst the crowd, that's still not a valid being mashbia aidim. So pshita, it's pashat. Obviously, that's what we're saying. If there were no aidim b'neim, how could it be shvus edus? The ka'iluya. We're talking about where, even where the edim are there, and even that the edim are standing there, meaning they're close by. So one might think, meaning we're going to see what that means. It's not that they're mamish there, but they're close by. Since they're standing, let's say the two closest people to him, when he says, whoever here knows Edis, maybe that's designated. And then Kamash Malan. Tanya Nami Hachi, Ra Asiya Shal B'nei Adam Oimdim. If a Teveya saw a group of people standing, the Eid of Beineim, and the Eidim are amongst them, V'amalahem Mashbiani Aleichem, Imatem Yoidim Li Edish Tavoy Vaiduni. And this is talking about, as we're going to see from the Sefer of this Brisa, that the Eidim happened to be standing right next to him, and he said, I'm making a shvu on you, that if you know Eidim should come and say, Yachal Yu Chayav, and I might think, since they're the ones standing closest to him, even though he didn't designate them specifically, he didn't mention them specifically, but because they're standing close to him, maybe that's enough to indicate that that's what he's talking about. It says, V'hu aid, it has to be that these are the aid, and not that they're one amongst many. And he did not designate them specifically. What if he said, not only were they standing next to him, but he said also, whoever is standing next to me should be, I'm being mashpia them. So he's obviously referring to the two people that were standing next to him. If he was miyachid, if he did designate them, now clearly, if it's talking about where they weren't standing next to them, and he said, kalo aimdim kan, it wouldn't help. Yeah, he doesn't mean that he said kalo aimdim kan, whoever's standing amongst the crowd. It means kalo aimdim kan, who are near me. So if they're standing near him, and he says whoever's standing near me, then that's a yichad. But if they were just standing him without him saying whoever's standing near me, that's not enough. Zok the Gemara. So that's why Shmuel said, even afilu beineim, even if they're in the crowd, right, and even if they're right next to him, unless he says, "This is who I'm talking about," it's not considered that he designated them, that he would say he was teveya them. Zok the Gemara, Amal shnai mashbi'ani aleichem. If he said to two people, "I'm placing a shvu on them," Zok the Gemara, turn around, Amal shnai mashbi'ani aleichem, ploini plain matam yoidim li'edish tavei v'turi, ve'im yoidim li'edish eid mi pi edish ayachad mehem karav. Apostle, the case of our Mishnah, what if these Eidim, either they only knew Eidus from hearsay, which is not valid Eidus, or they were a carve. We've quoted this, we've known this from the beginning of the parak. So they're very typical of we're like a blot away from the end of the parak, and now we finally see the pasuk or the limud that's the crux of all the whole limud of the parak. Shalach biyaravde. We said if the teveya sent a message to the aid saying, "I want you to come testify, and I want you to make a shvua that you don't know the edus." Tanaban shalach biyaravde she'amalehen nitva, or if it came from not from the person who wants their edus, but from the other party. Mashmin aleichem shematem yoidim le'edus shetavay v'tudin yachal yuchayav and tamalem le'yagiv v'nos avoyne. For the Gemara, my Talmud, how do you see from that it has to be the person who wants the edus that's being mashbiyan? Amr Abalaza, the pasuk says imla yagid. We read it as imla yagid if he doesn't say the edus, but ksiv. But it says ksiv with a vav, lamed vav aleph, which is not usually loy of no. It's just lamed aleph, but it says instead with a lamed vav aleph. So we teach it im loy. Lo yagid. If he doesn't testify to him, meaning the person who requires the testimony. But if he's implored or asked to say the edus by another party, that's not going to be chayiv a shvuos edus. Zok the Mishnah. Mashbiani aleichem mitzavani aleichem moisrachamani. If he said of saying just a regular shvu, he said mashbiani aleichem, mitzavani aleichem, which we're going to see this psukim that use the lashon tzivui. It says it bedafka, I think, by Elah hamitzvos hahukim. No, it's not in Rashi, but the pasuk used the lashon of tzivui as a shvu, and we also use Isur neder. We use it l'gabi neder. We use a lashon Isur. So what if he used those lashonos for his shvuas ha'edus? Harelu chayavim. But what if he said bashamayim ba'aretz? So we're finally going to answer Rafal's question that he asked a couple of days ago. This Mishnah makes it clear that he has to use the Shem Hashem in his shvuah. So what if he said Bashamayim of Aretz? If he says, instead of saying the Shem Hashem, he says, I'm making a shvuah Bashamayim of Aretz, Hare'elu Peturim. That's not a shvuah Sa'edus. Ba'alef Dalis, meaning with Aleph and then Dalid, meaning the Shem Adnus, or B'Yud K, with the Shem of Yud and K, B'Shakai, B'Tzvakos, B'Chanun V'Rachim, B'Rachapayim, B'Rav Chesed, B'Chol HaKinuyim. So the first things, the Aleph and Dalid, or Yud and then a Hey, those Lashon of Adnus, and the Shem Hashem, and Shakai and Tzvakos, those are all Shemus of Hashem. The Chanun V'Rachim, Erech HaPayim, B'Rav Chesed, those are descriptions of Hashem. So that's what we're saying. We're referring to. We say B'Cholai Kinuyin. Hare'elu Chayavin. All of these are going to be Chayiv B'Shvuas Edus. These are considered mentions of Hashem's name that will make it a valid Shvuas Edus. In addition, Hamakal B'Kulin Chayavin. Divrei Rameir. Acham and Paitrin. If someone makes a Makal, which is Mavarach Hashem, we're not talking about Makal, a person. We're going to say that later in the Mishnah. We're talking about someone who's Mavarach Hashem, which we said before. We had it, I think, back in Sanhedrin, that it refers to when someone uses Hashem's name to be Mavarach Hashem, using the word Mavarach euphemistically. That means the Isser of being Makal is only when someone is, the Rebbeinu Shalom is both the thing that he's using to be Makal, as well as the subject of his Kalal Chas v'Shalom. So we're saying if you make a klala with all of these, both the shemus as well as the kinuyin, you're going to be chayiv. According to Rameh, Chacham Poitrim, Chacham say you're going to be potter. We're going to see with the kinuyin. Hamakal aviv imoy, v'kulun chayavim. Again, someone who's makal aviv imoy is chayiv misa. That's going to be with any of these shemus and kinuyim. The Rameh, Chacham Poitrim, the Chacham say he's potter. Hamakal atzmoy v'chaveiroi v'kulun over beloisase. Stop being makal another person, or being makal himself, which we're going to see in the Gemara is also asur. You're over in just a lav. It's not like being makal of the imoy, makal, or being mavarach Hashem. What if he says, he quotes the pasuk, Yachicha Hashem b'shachavas u'chadavas u'b'delekes u'b'charchar. He says that lashon, he says that as a lashon shvua. If you don't come say this edus on my behalf, Yechacha Hashem Elikim B'chein, or if he says or he says a slight variation on that, Yechacha Hashem B'chein Yechacha Elikim, or if he says when he hears someone else saying it, he says so should be to you, like that person said, that should go on to you if you know edus and you don't say it. Zui ala ksuba haksuba b'Torah. That's also considered a curse that's mentioned in the Torah, and therefore will be a valid way of saying it, that it will be considered a shua sa'edis. Al yakcha v'yavarchecha v'yetiv lach. If he says the Rebbeinu Shalom should not hit you, and he should bench you, and should give to you, if you know edus and you say it. But by inference means if you don't come say the edus, then you should get the opposite of these things. You should get a klala. Ramei mechayv v'cham poitrim. Again, Ramei is mechayv and cham poitrim. That's consistent throughout the Mishnah. All these things that there's a machlekes. Ramei says yechayv and cham say yefat. So Gemara is going to go through them one by one. First of all, the first thing, mashbi'ani aleichem, nitzavani aleichem, esarchamani hareilu chayav. That's what we said in the Mishnah. In fact, Gemara Maika Amar. What is it coming to say? I'm reading the Hachi Mashbi'ani aleichem b'shvua hamura b'Torah mitzavani aleichem b'tzavo hamura b'Torah v'sarchamani b'isra hamura b'Torah. When he says any of these lashonis, what is he saying? He's saying that even though he's not saying the Shem Hashem, which is necessary with the shvua, but by saying Isarchem or Mashbi'ani with the lashon that it says in the Torah, then he's already, that's implicit in that is that he means that the shvuas or the alas, the klalas that are mentioned in the Torah, because he's saying I want to do the shvua that the Torah talks about, and the shvua that the Torah talks about is one where the Shem Hashem is mentioned. Amalei Abaya asks, a kaivel is a link in a chain. So he's saying, I'm placing I'm imposing on you this chain of a shvua, but it's not a lashon that's used in the Torah as a klala with a Shem Hashem. Kaivel baraisa miksiv. Does the Torah ever mention kaivel as a shvua? So how could you say? We said the list of the other things that are mentioned in the Torah, but kaivel is also mentioned. Ruchia has it. The kaivel is also, and kaivel the Torah never says. Elam abai haki kamar mashbi'anei aleichem b'shvua mitzav ani aleichem b'shvua isacham ani b'shvua kavalcham ani b'shvua. He says that it's not talking about where he said a shvua, and we're trying to understand the Shem Hashem. He said taka the Shem Hashem. That means it's coming to say, even if you say Isarchem, or even if you say Kaivalchem, which is not necessarily a Lashon HaShavua, as long as you say the Shem Hashem, that makes it, with any of these types of phrases that do have a mashmoyus of a Shvua, even though they're not clearly used like that in the Torah, the Shem Hashem, he says exactly the opposite of the Tanakh. The Shem Hashem indicates that it's a Shvua. Zok the
Well,
Gemara.
in the first case, Mashbiani Aleichem B'Shvua, you would have to use Shem Hashem. You always have to use Shem Hashem.
Yeah, according to
Then,
Abaya.
but and when he says Mashbiani Aleichem B'Shvua, that's already that's
That's not
different than
sufficient.
that's
According to Abaya, that's not sufficient. B'Shvua, the B'Shvua over here doesn't mean literally B'Shvua. It means B'Shem Hashem. All these things,
and he has to say Shem Hashem.
he
So
has to say the Shem
the
Hashem.
double.
That's what
The first of the four cases sounds almost like a double.
Mashbiani, yeah. But I'm
Yeah.
saying it's not the Shvua doesn't mean Shvua. It means B'Shem Hashem. I mean, the question is, what's the chiddush of that? Mashbiani is
Right.
a lashon Shvua, and he says B'Shem Hashem. I don't know what the chiddush. I guess it's just to build up loizu afzu type of thing. But in Abaya, it's a little hard to understand what's the chiddush of Mashbiani Aleichem B'Shvua, which Rashi is understanding to mean Mashbiani Aleich B'Shem Hashem. Yeah. Zok the Gemara. Ba'alef Dalis B'Yud K B'Shakai B'Tzvakos B'Chan V'Racham B'Rachapayim B'Rav Chesed. We said all of these are kinuyim of the shame, and therefore they would be valid l'shoinus of the shame in a shvua sa'edis, that the person will be chayiv a carbon oil of yared if he violated. Correct? Gemara, remember the Chan V'Racham shemus nenu. Are you saying also Chan V'Racham is a shame? Baramini. Yesh shemus shenim chakim, v'yesh shemus she'enim chakim. There are shemus of Hashem that one is allowed to erase because they're not considered the prime shemus, and there are others that you're not allowed to erase, like obviously the Yud K Vav K, Shem Adnus. What's the Bryce say? Elohein shemus she'enim chakim, going kale, elikecha, elikim, elikechem, eke asher eke, Aleph and Dalid, Yud and Hey, Shakai Tzvakos, Hare Elu Einim Chakim. All these are actual shemus. They're proper nouns. They're nouns that refer to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Aval, even though Eke Asher Eke to me sounds more like a description also, but I guess it's such a fundamental description that it's not considered a description. It's a name. Aval hagodol hagiba v'anoiro ha'adir ha'chazak ha'amitz ha'az is all different lashonis of strength. Chan and v'racham erechapayim v'rav chesed areilunum chakim. These all can be erased. So why are we saying over here that these are shemus that could be used in a shuas ha'edus and a person will be chayiv? But we're saying over there they can be erased because they're not considered actual shemus Hashem. Amar Abaya masisa b'mishehu chanan b'mishehu racham ka'amar. When we say, when someone uses Chanan v'Racham, if you write the Shem Chanan or the Shem Racham, that's saying the Rebbeinu Shalom who is, it's just, that's a description of the Rebbeinu Shalom. But when he uses it in a Shvua, what he means to say is Hashem who is a Chanan, Hashem who is a Racham. So it's a description, but it's meant in this case to refer to the actual Rebbeinu Shalom. It's not referring just to his description, but rather to him himself. Because in the context of being used as a shvua, that's what he means. He means to use a shame. He doesn't mean to use a description. Why don't we say, we said in the Mishnah, we said b'shamayim v'aretz is pater. Let's say b'misha shamayim v'aretz shaloi. Why don't we say the one that the shamayim and aretz belongs to? So Abai says back, Hachi ashta hasam kim deleka midi achrini de ikri racham v'chanan. Racham v'chanan are midas. They're not tangible objects. So when someone says Racham v'chanan, you can't say he's referring to the object of Racham v'chanan. V'adem mishu chanan, v'adem mishu Racham. It must be talking about the one who has those attributes. Kamar. Hacha. But legabe shamayim v'aretz, kimin de'ika shamayim v'aretz, v'ashamayim v'aretz kamar. If he says shamayim v'aretz, it doesn't mean the one who created shamayim v'aretz. He means the actual shamayim v'aretz. That's what he's making the shvuah. We actually, I'm pretty sure we see that there are, I seem to remember like the stories in the Gemara about people making a shvuah on the shamayim and on the aretz, b'shamayim. Tana Rabban, Kosav Aleph Lamed, he says the Shem Hashem of Kale, Me'alekim, or he says Yud K Vav K. He just says the first two letters. He's intending to write the Shem, but he only writes two of the letters. Hareza Eine Nimchak, you can't erase them. Since Kale and Yud K are both Shemus on their own, and he intended to write the shame, so that has the status of a shame that can't be erased. Shin and Dalid Mishakai, Aleph and Dalid from the shame Adnus, Tzadi and Beis Mitzvakos, Hareze Nimchak. These could all be Nimchak because those are not standalone shames of Hashem. They're just parts of a larger shame, and if you never got to write the whole shame, you could still erase it. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, Tzvakos Kulei Nimchak. Rabbi Yossi says no. Tzvakos, the whole shame Tzvakos is not a shame. Shalei Nikra Tzvakos El Al Shem Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom, we refer to when we say Tzvakos, it's like Shemayim V'Aretz. The Rebbeinu Shalom, the Shemayim Sha'aretz Shaloi. Tzvakos is really a reference to the Bnei Yisrael, and this is the Rebbeinu Shalom's nation of Tzvakos. So therefore, it's not referring directly to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Shnema v'Tzeisi Tzvoisai is Ami Bnei Yisrael. Tzvoisai is my legions, my troops, and that's Bnei Yisrael, my Eretz Mitzrayim. Amar Shmuel, Ein halacha Rabbi Yossi. He says halacha is not Rabbi Yossi, and Tzvakos, as you can see, I'm not pronouncing the word Tzvakos because we treat it as a full-fledged shame. Tanarban, Kol HaTavel shame, anything that's a prefix to a shame, Bein Milafanav Bein La'achav, when it's a prefix or a suffix, whether it's before the shame or afterwards, Hareza Nimchak, that could be erased. Lefanav Ketzad, Lahashem, if someone says Lamed and then the shame Hashem, Lamed Nimchak, Behashem, Beis Nimchak, Vav Vehashem, Vav Nimchak, Mehashem Mimchak, Shehashem Shin Nimchak, Hey Ha-Hashem Hey Nimchak, Ke-Hashem Kaf Nimchak. Any one of these letters that are part of the word of the Shem Hashem, it's added on as a prefix to the Shem Hashem. If you just erase that letter, it's not a problem. La'acharav Ketzad, Elikenu Nun Vav Nimchak. When you say Elikenu, then the nu at the end could be erased. Elikechem, the Hey Mem is Nimchak. Elikechem, Chaf and Mem is Nimchak. They say that any suffix, any addition at the end of the Shem Hashem cannot be erased. Since you already had the shame and this is added on at the end, so it already has it's already kavua as part of the shame, and it can't be nimchak. But if you do something from before, that's not part of the shame. The shame will stand on its own afterwards. Halach is taka like the acherim that you can't erase at the end of a shame. Now the Gemara is going to talk about, very often we'll find that the Torah will use a shame, let's for example use a shame Elehus, referring to Avodah Zarah, or Adain. We always talk about an Adainei Haaretz. Adnos, Adain can mean a lord or a master. So we're going to talk about different mentions in the Torah, whether they're Kodesh or Chayil, whether they're referring to the Rebbeinu Shalom or they're referring to some other reference, some other context. So Kol Shemes Hamurim b'Torah b'Avram, whenever it uses the shame Adnus by Avram, Kodesh. They're all Kodesh. Chutz mizeh shehu Chayil, except for one that's Chol Shenemar v'Yomer. Now, where's the pasuk? Where's the base? V'Yomer Shem Adnus Imna Matzos. It's going to be machlokes whether this is a Shem Chayil or Shem Adnus. So, in interest of out of abundance of caution, I'm going to use the Shem Adnus. V'Yomer Adnus Imna Matzos Licheim Be'einecha. That this is what Avram said, B'Pashtus, to the Malachim. He said, "If I find favor in your eyes, come sit and eat with me." Chanina ben so we're saying that's Chayil. This is referring to the Malachim. Chanina ben Achi Rabbi Yeshua v'Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah Mishum Rebbe Elazar Hamidoi Amru Avzek Kodesh. This is also Kodesh. Kaman Asla, who is it like that they're saying it's Kodesh? Hadamar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav Gedoy Lachnas is Orchem Yosimei Hakbalos Pnei Ashchina. Kaman Ka'osei Azuk. Rabbi Yehuda Amarav says Hachnas Zarchim is greater than Kabbalas Pnei Ashchina, because we see Avram Avinu, he understands that this pasuk is Vayomer Hashem Imna Matzasi Chemeinecha Sim. You should wait over here. That was Avram talking to the Rebbeinu Shalom, tell him, I'm going to go to the Malachim and you wait here because I have to go take care of Achnosas Orchim. So Yehuda Merav, who says Achnosas Orchim is greater than me Mekabel Pnei Shechina, you see that because Avram left the Shechina to go deal with Achnosas Orchim. But that means that this oddness over here is Taka, the Avram talking to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kol Shemus Hamurim Beloit, all the different Shemus that said by Loit Choil, they're all a shame. When it says Adoni, it's referring to the master, meaning to there was a way, a mannered way of referring to the person you're talking to. Chutz mizeshu kodesh, except this is kodesh. Nemar v'yomer loit al aleihem al no adnus hine no motza avdachachem beinecha. He says, if you find favor in my eyes, this is Kaddish because it's not referring to the Malachim, but it's referring to the one who decides who lives and dies, which is referring to, he's saying that the whole pasuk is Hine no motza avdachachem beinecha v'tikid l'chazdecha asher asisi imadi l'hachayis es nafshi v'anoichi l'uchel himali tahara pentit v'kani arov amesi. Loi was asking that he shouldn't have to run so far. He's scared he's going to die. So he wasn't referring anymore to the Malach. He was referring to the Rebbeinu Shalom, who's the one who has life and death in his hands. Kol shemis hamurim ben novis kodesh. All of the shemis that were stated by novis. This is the evil king Achav and his wife Yizavel. They wanted to take the vineyard from this fellow Novis, so they hooked up that he was being Mekalel Hashem. So we say all the shemis that are said in that incident are all kodesh. But Micha Chayil, and all the shemis by Micha set up Avodah Zaros that were spread throughout Eretz Yisrael. Those are all referring to Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Elazar, I'm Benavis kodesh. He says Benavis is kodesh, like we said. Chutz mizeh. I lost my place. Chutz mizeh. She'alef lamed b'hu kodesh, where it says aleph and lamed, the lashon kale, and that's kodesh.
Did you skip?
What?
Did I
skip?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Elazar Benavis kodesh b'micha. Yeshman Chal v'Yeshman Kodesh. By Micha, there's those that are Chal, those that are Kodesh. Aleph Lamed Chal. Yud Kei, Yud and Kei, that's Kodesh. Chutz Mizeh, except so all the examples by Micha, it's split. Those are the Chal and those are Kodesh. So Aleph Lamed is always Chal and Yud Kei is always Kodesh. Chutz Mizeh, Shalaf Lamed Vu Kodesh. There is one Aleph Lamed that is Kodesh by Micha. When he says Kol Yemei Hayois Beis Ha'Elokim B'Shina Kol Shem, when he says all the days that the Beis Ha'Elokim, generally Micha was talking about Avodah Zarah when he mentioned Elokim, but there when he said the Beis Elokim B'Shila, he's referring to the Mishkan Shila. That's a Beis Elokim. That means the Rebbeinu Shalom's Mishkan. So that is clearly that Kale is also Kodesh. Then we say Kol Shem Amurim Begivis Binyamin. That's the mice of the Shevet Binyamin, that there was an incident that they killed Pilegesh Begiva, they killed Pilegesh, and the other Shvatim wanted to punish Binyamin, and they made Mecham against them. And the pasuk says that they kept on asking for a shush, so they go into a Mecham against Binyamin. The Bereshim said go, and they waged war against them, and the Yidden were defeated. The other Shvatim suffered great losses, and that happened twice. And then the third time they finally defeated them. So we say, Kol Shem Amur Begivus Binyamin, Rebbe Elazar Aimer Chayil, Rebbe Yeshua Aimer Kodesh. Amalei Rebbe Elazar V'chi Maftiach Ve'ena Oisa. It says that they went and asked from Elokim. They asked a lashon, or one of these lashonis of Kale or Adnus. They asked permission, should they go to war? The question is that talking about a lashon of the Rebbeinu Shalom? Was that talking about they went to the Avodah Zarah to ask? So, how could it be a lashon kodesh? How could it be that the Rebbeinu Shalom was the one who told them to go to Milchama and then they got killed? No, they asked the Rebbeinu Shalom if they should go to war, and he said yes. And he fulfilled what he said. He said you should go to war. V'heim loy biknu im l'mtzoyach b'achroina. V'im l'natzeach. They didn't ask if they were going to win or lose. That means they asked the Rebbeinu Shalom, they go, but they didn't ask if we go, will we natzeach? Certainly, if the Rebbeinu Shalom would have said, if you go, you're going to win, they would have won. But in the last war that they did win, shebichnu, that they did ask if they're going to win or not. Hiskimu al yadav. In that case, he was masking. Shenemar Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. Ayman elfanu bayom mehem lemar. Ha'oisef oid lotzes l'milchama im b'ni ben yamin achi im echtal. What's the end of the pasuk? Im echtal v'yoyim Hashem alu ki machar etnenu biyadecha. In that case, in the third time, the Baruch Shem Taka said they're going to win. So that one is certainly the Rebbeinu Shalom and not that's Kodesh and not Chol. So that's the word. Kol Shleima Amur B'Shir Hashirim. Where we know Shir Hashirim starts Shir Hashirim Asher L'Shleima Hanashekim Meshikas Piu. That Shleima is a lashon. It could either be referring to Shleima Melech, it could be a lashon Shalom, which is the Rebbeinu Shalom. So they say they're all Kodesh. Shir Lamisha Shalom Shaloi. It's a shir for the one to whom has Shalom. That's the Rebbeinu Shalom. Chutz mizeh, except for this one. Karmi shali lifnei elef lecha. Kani shali lefanai. My kerem is in front of you. Elef lecha shloima. Shloima lididei. Lecha shloima lididei. Umasayim lenoitem es period. 1,000 go to you from my kerem. 1,000 go to you, and 200 go to those who watch. So that shloima, it's halaf lecha shloima l'didei. That's talking about shloima himself. Masayim l'noitim es period rabbanon. That's referring to the rabbanon that the Rebbeinu Shalom said you could have 1,000 people watching you. You have to leave over 200 to be rabbanon. They understood it differently. Hine matase shel shloima means the Rebbeinu Shalom shishim. That's that this is also mitasa shel shloima. This is also chayil. The shel shloima, it's referring to Shloima HaMelech's bed. He had shishim. He had 60 guards around it. Zakamara avzel loimi boyalech. The mashmais of that is that avzel, in addition to the first one, the first shloima that's referring to Shloima HaMelech. This second one, he mitasa shel shloima, is also referring to Shloima HaMelech. Zakamara lahadam Shmuel machusa de katla chad mishisa ba'alma loimi ansha. A malchus that takes out 1 out of 6, or meaning 20 out of 120, to be part of their to go into war, to be subject to being killed. They're not going to get punished. That's a fair amount. You have to have 1,000 go to the Rebbeinu Shalom that they're not going to be touched. That you can take for your own uses. So that's over there. We're saying Shloima is referring to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Shmuel like a Tanakama, like Yeshayimrim. According to it's not like the Tanakama who said it just by he said that the first one, only the first one, is going to be Chayil, and the other Manama says not the first one is Chayil, the one where he mentions 200 versus 1,200, and certainly the one where he says Mitasei. Elahachi Kamav Yeshayimrim Zeh Kaidev Zehu Chayil the Mitasei Zehu Chayil the Mitasei. That's the second Manam is not saying loizu after. He's not saying he agrees with the first one. He's saying the first one is kodesh and this is chayil. Shmuel the Amar ki yeshayim. Shmuel is saying like this yeshayim. Whenever it talks about a melech in Daniel, it's referring to chayil. Chutz mizeshu kodesh am malka melech malchaya the Allah shmaya malchusa chasna v'takfa v'yikra yoavla. This when he says, and you are the melech of all kings. The Allah Shmaya Machusa Chasna, the one who's secure, v'takva and strong, v'yikra and beloved, Yavlach, he's going to give it to you. So it's saying he's going to give the Rebbeinu Shalom. He's saying the Rebbeinu Shalom has given you all these things. So it says, Melech Machai di Allah Shmaya Machusa Chasna. He's giving you Machusa Chasna. So this Machusa is talking about Nebuchadnezzar's Malchus that he's being given by the Rebbe Shalom. This is also there's another one that's Kodesh. It says Marachalma. It says this nightmare should go to your enemies. And it's when Nebuchadnezzar had a bad dream, Daniel said to him that all these nightmares should come true to your enemies. So this is Daniel saying it says Mar, right? Mare, which is a lotion of a king, and it's saying that he's saying that he wants it to come true because he's saying it to the Rebbe Shalom. Laman Kamer, who is he talking about? He's talking about Nebuchadnezzar. If he's saying it to Nebuchadnezzar, Kamalei Sanusa Maininu Yisrael, Mila Kalai Lulu Yisrael. It's impossible that Daniel was saying to Nebuchadnezzar, this should come true on your enemies, which are the Yidden. He would never say such a thing. So it must be that he was saying to the Rebbe Shalom that Nebuchadnezzar's enemy, that it should be to his enemies, meaning to Nebuchadnezzar, that it should go, the nightmare of Nebuchadnezzar should happen on him. The Tanakama saw Sani Yisrael, Ika Sani Avdei Chavim Leka. No, Nebuchadnezzar had plenty of enemies. It wasn't only Sani Yisrael. It could be he was talking to Nebuchadnezzar. Should go on his enemies, but meaning not Yisrael, one of his many other people who justifiably hated him. Okay, we'll stop over here. Beshem, we'll continue tomorrow at 10 to 8.
Are we going longer tomorrow?